Welcome back to another episode of Pop Culture here at Prince of Peace Parish, coming to you from the choir loft with Megan, Devin, and Franca. And today we're going to talk about some Powerhouse Saints. I would call it Power Hour, but this definitely won't be an hour.
No.
But we just wanted to talk about all of these saints just had feast days recently or are having feast days within like the next couple days. Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk about Pope Saint John Paul II. It's a mouthful.
Put that respect on his name.
I did, and I made sure I said Pope first.
Yes, yeah.
I wanted to get it correct.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to talk about Mother Teresa or Saint Teresa of Calcutta and a little bit of Padre Pio because he is close to my heart and I've adopted him as my patron. Awesome. So we're going to start a little bit with JP2.
Yes. So JP2, common way that people refer to Pope Saint John Paul II. So when we do this, there's so many biographies about these people. I mean, now with the internet and Netflix documentaries and whatever, you can go out and find things on them. So we just really wanted to share a few nuggets or factoids about their lives that kind of spoke to us. And for John Paul II, we all know he was born Karol Wojtyła in Poland, but he was the second longest serving pope in modern history after Pius IX. He was the first non-Italian pope elected since the 16th century. The Italians had a lock on that office.
Heck yeah.
I knew it, but I didn't realize it was since the 16th century. He did so much for ecumenical relations, which I thought was really interesting. He reached out to so many others, especially leaders in the other world religions, especially with the folks in the Jewish faith and the Muslims, and also the Orthodox Church. He did a lot to reach out to the Orthodox side of Christianity. So he's very big in ecumenical relations. And we all know that he really had this call to holiness. He really would want Catholics to strive to be saints. And he kind of put his money where his mouth is because he beatified 1,340 people.
He wasn't messing around.
No, he was a saint maker, let me tell you. He canonized 483 people, but that is more than the combined tally of all of his predecessors since the 5th century. So that just to me is wild. But before he was, Pope John Paul II, again, we knew he was this young man in Poland. He had a gift for languages. He spoke like 15 different languages.
Brilliant.
And he was known that he was an athlete. He was very athletic. But for me, the reason I kind of have this kindred spirit with him is he was an actor. I have a theater background, and he was a very good actor, they say. And so to me, that's really neat. He actually did aspire to possibly have a career on stage. And so to me, that's really kind of cool because I think we all think of, especially priests that become bishops, that become cardinals, that, send to the papacy as these people that was the end goal, from the get-go. But yes, he grew up in a very Catholic family, but he wanted to be an actor, was an athlete, so we kind of jokingly say priests are people too, but so are popes. And the other thing I love about him is I really love Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI. He's an absolutely phenomenal theologian and just an absolutely incredibly intelligent man. And I sometimes think that Benedict XVI, he had a hard act to follow. I mean, he literally followed a saint.
Yeah.
And so there's something, you can find it on the internet, but it's this idea that John Paul II told us what we believe. Benedict said, this is why we believe it. And Francis is saying, now go and do it. So I kind of love tying this thread between these three papacies because I think, for all of us and for a lot of people, John Paul II, Megan, I loved what you said before we started recording. He was the Pope.
Yeah.
Because for so many people, he was the only Pope they had in their lifetime. Now, a lot of us have had 3, but for some, he was the only one for the longest time. So I love that idea of tying the 3 of them together and tying Benedict and Francis back to John Paul II. Because again, I think so many people are familiar. He was a living saint in our midst.
Yeah.
And I know that's what the three of them are, but
Yeah.
for so many people, John Paul II, you know, when you talk about the Pope, that's the Pope they knew. So I don't know. That's what I found kind of interesting about him. And
I think that's
like,
what's so cool about these three folks is that we were able to see them in pictures and recording
and color pictures.
not
Not to be facetious, but I mean,
Yeah.
how many times do you see a picture of a saint and it's something that is colorized, but we saw them in pictures, we saw them in TV, we have recordings, we know what they sounded like, we know what they really looked like.
Yeah.
It's not just, well, this is maybe what St. Peter looked like.
Or
Or
we
this
saw
is,
them in person.
Yeah,
I got
yeah.
to see him from afar,
Yeah.
you know, from his little Pope mobile way off in the distance. But it was so cool because I had wanted to be able to go to Denver. That was right after I graduated high school, and they had that World Youth Conference Day, and he was there, but
Yeah.
I couldn't go. So then at least I got to see him from afar, and he just seemed like such an approachable person, somebody you could relate to, and just effortlessly cool.
Yes!
You know? And he was just, he was our Pope.
Yep, he just had like the super charismatic personality. Like he just felt like watching the videos, I felt like I could just feel the warmth.
Yes.
Like it was just
but
ridiculous.
also just such a powerfully holy person. And again, to be able to say, I'm a regular person, but I just have this holiness, and again that presence.
Yeah.
What a wonderful model of living sainthood to us, and something for us to aspire to.
Yeah, he was really inspirational for me. Just that you can't count the number of times he said, "Be not afraid." You know, that was his line, and that's so inspirational to me.
Be not afraid when there were assassination attempts. He is widely credited as helping to end communism in his native Poland. So be not afraid, and yet so many people were.
Because he was
were after
fearless.
him.
Yeah.
You know, even though he may not really have been underneath it all,
Right.
but he was fearless
Yeah.
and for us, and it was great.
Yeah, this quote from him, just before we move on to Mother Teresa, it was really inspirational for me. And so he says, I plead with you, never ever give up on hope, never doubt, never tire, and never become discouraged. Be not afraid. Like, we just need that in our daily lives. Like, I need to read that to myself every single morning. That's so amazing. Like, in all aspects of your life, but particularly in our faith, because so many times we're scared to share our faith or, you know, truly live out our faith. So it's like, never, a saint told you that. So never ever be discouraged. Real quick because I found it interesting, the miracles that these saints, these miracles that made these folks saints. Just if anyone's interested. So the first one for JP2 is a nun that was dying from Parkinson's disease, which he also had. And she prayed to him and she was cured. And then the second one was a woman who was cured of a brain aneurysm. And she said a photograph of Pope John Paul II spoke to her. And after that, she was cured of the brain aneurysm. So that's kind of amazing. Yeah. And so Mother Teresa, you see them in pictures together. Like, it's so crazy.
Yes.
There's so much holiness, like, in one place. It's just really neat. I always looked at saints, like, from a distance, like these folks that lived centuries ago. And, lived amazing lives and still have great stories to tell and are super amazing for us to follow in their footsteps. But it's so cool that these people lived in our day and age, in our time. And John Paul II and Mother Teresa had a lot of interactions.
They did.
They were pals.
They were. And, and like you said, we're not going to go into the biography and all of the different things. But I just loved, she was called at a young age to be a nun. And then after she had become a nun, she was on a train ride when she said she got her second calling. It was a call within a call that would forever transform her life. She was riding a train from Calcutta to the Himalayan foothills for a retreat when she said that Christ spoke to her and told her to abandon teaching to work in the slums of Calcutta, aiding the city's poorest and sickest people. So she literally for 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years, kept, pleading to be allowed to do that because her order wasn't necessarily willing to let her go.
Right.
And eventually she did, and she just started ministering to the sick, and she was relentless with that. And what really struck me about her was that, you know, you hear about the dark night of the soul. She experienced that for 50 years, with the exception of a couple of small moments where she felt God again. But she never stopped. She never quit. And she said she had a blind faith. That was the only thing that could get her through. Wow. And so it makes you think, wow, if she could persevere through 50 years, we can persevere no matter what. Yep. And about 4 years before her death, she had told some of the nuns that she worked with, she said, the devil is continuously on the prowl in order to make you feel that it's impossible for Jesus to really love you and is cleaving to you. That's a danger for us all. And I mean, think about our society today. Everywhere you turn, people feel unloved and unwanted, and that is exactly what Satan wants. And she said, just keep on, keep on keeping on, and keep your faith. And so it's just a great message, you know, to think about for anybody who's struggling.
One of the things I love about her and her work is that she was working with the poorest of the poor.
Truly.
And she sometimes people were brought to her literally on death's door. And she brought such dignity to these people, no matter how poor or how sick they were. And the dignity she gave to the dying and her order, that was something that always resonated with me, that it wasn't that they were turned away. It was they were welcomed in, whether they had minutes to live, hours, days, whatever. She gave such dignity in people's final hours.
Yeah, and her 2 miracles, if you guys are interested, she healed a woman that had a tumor, and the story goes, I think it was a miraculous medal, but the woman was brought to the Missionaries of Charity, the order that she created, and they placed, this tumor was in her stomach, they placed this miraculous medal, or some type of medal, I may be misremembering, but they placed it on her stomach where the tumor was, and it went away. No medical doctor could explain it or anything.
And as we're talking about these miracles, we're going to get into canonization, beatification in November, because it is a cool process. And like as we're talking about these are things that could not be scientifically explained after the fact. So
they are researched, and we'll go into that a little bit more. So, and her second one is she healed a man with a bacterial infection that caused brain abscesses. And the story goes, it was a husband and wife, and their priest, the husband was having this infection, and their priest told them, well, try praying to St. Teresa of Calcutta. And they did, and they were getting ready, like this last ditch effort for surgery, and they took him into surgery, and he sat up in the operating room and said to the surgeon, like, what's going on? And they like scanned him, and everything was gone. Like he was perfectly fine. So it's crazy. I just got chills.
you can go down a rabbit hole, like finding some of this stuff. It's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is.
So we're going to move on to Padre Pio now. And I know we don't have a lot of time left in this episode, but maybe some other time we'll just talk about our favorite saints, because Padre Pio, when I've asked for his intercession, he's done stuff that has been borderline miraculous for me. And so, I mean, I can share those stories sometimes, but very clear, obvious signs that my prayers were directly answered in ridiculous ways. But so his feast day, and this is another thing. I'll be honest for a second with the folks here. We were researching for this. I love JP2, one of my faves, love Mother Teresa. I was just not feeling inspired. And I'm texting these two knuckleheads, and I'm like, I'm just not feeling inspired. And I was like, I don't know what's going on. And I don't know why Padre Pio, I don't know how he got involved in my research today. But then I ended up researching when his feast day was, and I have such this devotion to him, and I had no idea when his feast day is. His feast day is September 23rd. We're recording this on the 18th. Yeah. So it was completely appropriate. And I was like, bam, you did it for me again, bro. That's right. So it's cool because he ties in a little bit with JP2. Yeah. So in 1947, Father Carol Wojtyla, who we now know as JP2, he visited Padre Pio. And he told him he would rise to the highest post in the church. So this was in 1947, and he became Pope in 1978.
Yeah.
It's just so cool. Some of this, Padre Pio was a mystic. He, all these cool things about him. By location, he had the stigmata. We can talk about that more sometime.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because medical doctors did research and couldn't find any reason why he would have these wounds. And they never got infected, but they never healed.
Right.
And so that's,
yeah. And there's pictures of that too.
Yes.
Again, you go out on the internet, there are pictures of that.
Yeah. So in our last episode, I talked about how much I'm not a fan of confession and how nervous and shaky and sweaty I get when I go to confession. So I would have loved to go to confession to Padre Pio because he knew your sins.
Yes.
So many people said he already knew.
Wow.
And if they didn't confess, he'd call them out.
Yes.
He'd be like, you didn't confess. I'm not giving you absolution yet. You didn't confess all your sins.
And I'd be like, can you just please tell me what I
Yes.
missed? Because I don't know what I forgot.
I watched an interview with a guy there that he did. He was like, I honestly don't know, Father. Like, what else could there possibly be? And he told him about this sin that he committed like 10 or 25 years ago when he was in the army. And he said, you've been carrying around this sin on your soul all this time. You've never confessed it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just wild. People would wait hours and
like a
days to go to confession with him.
That's like a confessional power washing.
Yes.
Seriously.
If you're going to go
Yeah.
that far
real.
back.
I mean, this guy was an absolute powerhouse. I think I mentioned earlier, he had the gift of bilocation too. So to be in two places at once. And it's explained a couple different ways, but sometimes it was almost like he stopped time. It just wild. Yeah, absolutely wild. This guy that lived in more modern times. It was blowing my mind. Other friars said that they saw him levitating in prayer. And I shared with you guys earlier, that would totally freak me out. Please, if I ever start levitating while we're during mass, somebody come get me. I'm not okay.
Do something.
Stop the mass. So Padre Pio's two miracles for sainthood. He cured an 11-year-old boy that was in a coma. And then a woman with lung disease, she recovered, and it was, miraculous. It couldn't be explained. It was just all of a sudden she recovered. Yeah, it's just so cool.
Yeah.
So Padre Pio, my favorite phrase of his is pray, hope, and don't worry. The simplest thing in the world, but if we completely live that, how amazing would that be? I've said this many times, my life is so much more, I don't even know what I want to say, all of me is just more calm and relaxed and even keel when I pray on a daily basis. And I can tell when my prayer slips up. So just pray, hope, don't worry. He said anxiety does nothing. It's easier said than done, but when you hear this big powerhouse saint say it, we can all do that.
It is. We can all aspire to holiness. And that's why we have the saints. And that's why the church promotes saints, so that we can see, as I think the thread between all three of them is that they all had weaknesses. They all had struggles. And kind of to tie in the last show, they all showed up.
Yep.
They all showed up, and they kept showing up
Yeah.
when things got hard. And again, that's why the saints are fabulous models of holiness for all of us.
Yeah.
Do you remember back, well, you guys are younger than I am, but it used to be really popular in the 80s that if somebody was trying to do something good, somebody would be all snarky and say, well, who are you, Mother Teresa?
Yeah.
And, and I just thought, I will never be that good a human being, but I just will never stop trying.
Yeah,
and that's
Never stop trying, show up.
Yep.
But I'm sure all three of them would have said, they would have never thought themselves to be holy enough to reach sainthood. I mean, and it's not to totally go off on a tangent, but even there's this really interesting thing, and maybe one day we'll talk about how a man becomes pope, but there's this really interesting story that when they go to vest, I believe they refer to that room as the crying room, because they say that, these men are just so overwhelmed that they've just become pope, they're vesting, and now they're going to go out to St. Peter's Square and give their first blessing, that they break down. And it's that same idea. These men think of themselves as so humble that they would never become pope. These Catholics, they were ordinary Catholics who went on to become saints.
Yeah. And I also, in a lot of interviews or videos that you watch about saints, you know, they'll be like, well, we can't all be saints, we can't all perform miracles. But to be quite honest with you, who knows?
Right.
These people were normal people,
Yes.
and like this stuff just.
But you also don't know if you do something in your normal everyday life that is a miracle for someone else. How often, like on social media, do we see these stories of, oh, you know, I was in the grocery line and someone had forgotten their debit card, and turns out they're buying like formula and diapers for their baby, and someone shows up behind them and swipes their debit card. You don't know what little miracle your good work is in someone else's life.
Exactly. Yep, exactly right. Yeah, like Padre Pio had so many miracles during his life. It was ridiculous. Like people, I mean, he healed people just by touching them or not even seeing them. People would write him letters and he would pray for them and they would be healed. Like just ridiculous powerhouse saint. One of the things that I read that I thought was really cool toward the end of his life, his stigmata started to heal up. And by the time he had passed at his funeral, he had no marks of the stigmata anymore. And the one priest that was being interviewed said he was fully enjoying our Lord's resurrection.
Yeah, that's
Like,
the first thing.
that's
the first thing.
so
my mind went to.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely. Like how God worked through, you know, the stigmata that he had his entire life, and then it came to like fruition in his death. Like, such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Guys, we did great talking about these things.
We did.
Well,
times.
Franco will include some more links
I will.
about these folks. And I'm going to leave you with this quote from Padre Pio, though. I'm sorry, he's my guy. We're going to have to talk about him again.
Well, of course.
But when he was dying, they said he just kept repeating, Jesu Maria, Jesu Maria. And somebody said, oh, can I call you a doctor? Can I call you a doctor? And basically, like, he's like, no, like, I'm okay. And he said, I can do much more for all of you from heaven than I can do from here.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's so comforting. Look up Padre Pio. There's a couple novenas to Padre Pio as well that are really great, but he's a powerhouse comforting saint for me. So
if you're looking for a saint to just start out with and someone that you can kind of emulate, start with one of these three.
Yeah.
They were modern saints. There's tons of resources on them.
yeah, just watch them. Just like watch a video of them because just their behaviors, and I don't know, it was intriguing to me to watch. Like my eyes were glued to the screen. And I shared with you guys beforehand, I was watching a mass that Padre Pio was celebrating, and I just like broke down and started crying. Like this guy is just like so amazing. Like you can see through a screen like the holiness of this person. It's just incredible. So check out some of these saints. We'll include some links. We'll include some. We'll figure it out. We'll get you guys resources.
Absolutely.
These are some great saints to start with. We have some great more episodes coming up very, very soon with maybe a couple returning special guests.
Very excited.
Friend of the show. And I'll tease that later.
Absolutely.
All right. So, Devin, do your bell spiel real quick.
You know, subscribe to our channel and make sure you click that bell so that anytime any of this new Catholic content drops, you're able to get at it first.
So until next time, God bless.